There is a suspect in custody, and according to Tobin's reporting there, you just heard, they have been able to confirm he is also an illegal alien in this country.
This video appears to show Border Patrol agents apparently deploying flash grenades and tear gas on a crowd of people in the predominantly Mexican Little Village neighborhood. You can see one woman then throwing an object back.
What are we doing?
A gunman drove up to Border Patrol agents and opened fire as they attempted to make arrests in a Chicago neighborhood. This is part of a growing pattern of violent resistance from criminal aliens during routine enforcement operations. In recent weeks, agents have been surrounded, and, in several cases, shot at. Officials report that attempts to defuse tensions are being complicated by local protests and political pushback, which have allowed multiple suspects to slip away. Now investigators are asking a critical question. Are these clashes simply the result of community mistrust, or do they signal a coordinated effort by criminal networks to obstruct federal law enforcement? Chicago's breaking point. Border Patrol agents getting attacked on the job has become an all-too common scene across the country, especially in places like Chicago. At best, the altercations result in failed arrests and obstruction of justice. At worst, agents get injured and may even require serious medical attention. And this is exactly what happened during a recent Border Patrol operation around 26th Street and Kedzie Avenue. While going about their business, trying to make arrests of targeted illegal immigrants, a black Jeep suddenly pulled up in front of them. Within seconds, the windows rolled down, and an unidentified male fired shots at the agents. What followed was chaos. The crowd grew wild as protesters started chanting, taunting the agents. They started throwing things at the agents, including a can of paint and a rock that actually made contact with and hurt a number of them. Meanwhile, the agents had to try to control the crowd while still wondering what had just happened and if this gunman was going to come back and attempt to finish the job. However, anyone who has been following DHS activities over the last few months would know that something like this was bound to happen sooner or later, because Chicago has gradually become one of the places where being a Border Patrol agent means having a permanent target on your back. The build-up, campaign of terror. Some might argue that working for the DHS in any capacity, especially being on the front lines in the fight against illegal immigration, is a noble cause, and many Border Patrol agents would tell you they're proud of the work they're doing to protect the country. Unfortunately, this work has become one of the most dangerous ones in the entire country because they're getting death threats, credible ones. According to reports, criminal gangs and cartels have set up extensive networks tracking ICE activity across the city. Gangs like the Latin Kings have deployed spotters armed with firearms and radio communications to provide the real-time movements of CBP and ICE agents. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem called this surveillance an organized campaign of terror against Border Patrol agents, and there couldn't possibly have been a more accurate description. These gangs allegedly placed bounties as high as $50,000 on the heads of ICE agents. Official reports describe it as a tiered bounty system. This means the cartels are allegedly offering various grades of payment in exchange for undermining ICE and CBP agents. $2,000 for intelligence gathering and doxing of agents, $5,000 to $10,000 for kidnapping or non-lethal assaults on standard ICE CBP officers, and up to $50,000 for the assassination of high-ranking officials. And this is only the perceived threat getting to the higher-ups. Down on the ground, it's more than just rumor or conjecture. The threats are real, and there are faces behind them. Take Eduardo Aguilar, for example. On October 14th, 2025, Aguilar was arrested in connection with a TikTok video he had posted a week earlier soliciting the murder of ICE agents. As anyone can guess, he was an illegal alien from Mexico living in Dallas, Texas. In his video, he called for 10 dudes in Dallas with determination who aren't afraid to eliminate ICE agents, offering $10,000 for each agent. After his arrest, police found a 9mm handgun in his vehicle, As resistance to Border Patrol activity increases, the streets become more and more primed for real violence to break out. The type that involves masked men pulling up to agents and opening fire on them. However, the problem didn't just start with this attack, or with the ICE activities, or with that gunman. It started with policy, Chicago's weak policy problem. Chicago has become a focal point for federal immigration enforcement, and investigators say the reason is straightforward. Long-standing gaps in the city's immigration policies have created conditions that allow large numbers of undocumented individuals to settle with limited oversight. For years, Illinois' relaxed approach to immigration enforcement has contributed to Chicago becoming a destination for asylum seekers and migrants from regions including Venezuela, Nicaragua, and the Caribbean. Federal officials say these policies have also made it easier for individuals with criminal backgrounds to remain in the city undetected. One of those individuals was Julio Cuckoo Bull, whose involvement in a fatal hit-and-run in Illinois prompted DHS to launch Operation Midway Blitz, a large-scale effort targeting undocumented individuals with criminal histories across Chicago. Inside Operation Midway Blitz, earlier this year, Julio Cuckoo Bull killed 2 women and hurt 3 others in a hit-and-run crash in Urbana. The victims were 21-year-old Chloe Polson and 20-year-old Katie Abraham, who was a sophomore at Ohio University, visiting friends at the University of Illinois. According to investigators, this incident would have been totally avoided if the culprit hadn't even been in the country to begin with. The grieving families were left with more questions than answers. Katie's father visibly broke down as he tried to capture even a fraction of the hurt the family was feeling in words. He said, "We won't get to experience how she was going to evolve. I'll never be able to walk her down the aisle. She will never have children. I'll never get to see her children. She'll never be an aunt." A Guatemalan citizen, Bull had been in the U.S. illegally for years before this tragic accident. With no background checks, he was allowed to own a vehicle and a driver's license. On the day of the incident, Bull had been to 3 bars and had more than enough to drink. Police found open cans of beer in his car, a car he was driving at 78 miles an hour when he rear-ended Katie's Honda Civic. After the crash, Bull abandoned his victims and the SUV he was driving, making off on foot. When police eventually apprehended him, they made disturbing but unsurprising discoveries. He had a false permanent resident card, social security card, and passport, and had made a false statement on a bank application using the name Sayans Suarez. He eventually made a plea deal and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. But for the families of the victims, a prison sentence is not enough. Katie's father demanded to know who could be held responsible in the state of Illinois. Since its creation, Operation Midway Blitz has seen the arrest of over 3,000 immigrants, many of whom are active members of violent gangs, have a criminal history, or both. However, the operation's success has been hard-won, and the agents putting their lives at risk every day face increased threats from protesting residents and attacks from criminal aliens. With all this tension in the air, you would think that the mayor or governor would step in and attempt to calm the situation down. But as the agents were about to find out, they were fighting a battle on many fronts.
Here we're in Brighton Park in Chicago. On 39th and Kedzie was a shooting earlier, a ICE-involved shooting. We want to demand an investigation because they are escalating violence. They are escalating violence in the city. This is not making anyone safer.
Single shooting to citywide crackdown. After the incident, DHS launched a manhunt for the suspect, but even there, they faced many challenges. DHS released a statement calling the incident a dynamic situation, adding that this incident is not isolated and reflects a growing and dangerous trend of violence and obstruction. DHS also framed the attack as the consequence of vitriolic smears from sanctuary politicians and the media. This was a direct response to the media deliberately demonizing ICE and CBP agents, raising public suspicion against people just trying to do their jobs. And they're not wrong either. Politicians and media in the city have done nothing to de-escalate the situation. If anything, they fueled the discord even more. On the day of the attack, Alderman Mike Rodriguez shifted all the blame from the culprits to the CBP agents. He accused them of using undue force, saying he witnessed them use flash grenades on unarmed protesters. Rodriguez called the whole thing a day of terror, following an agenda of terror by this president. He even went as far as calling the agents the Gestapo.
We were protesting peacefully when for no reason the Gestapo let go of a flash band.
Those are undoubtedly very strong terms to use in describing an act that the office of the president is well within its rights to sanction, especially coming from someone with some level of authority within the community. But it goes even further than that. Federal officials say their investigation has been complicated by local and state policies that limit cooperation with immigration enforcement. The White House criticized Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson for maintaining multiple ICE-free zones, areas where federal agents cannot access detainees without local approval. Investigators believe the gunman may have used one of these locations to evade capture. At the state level, Governor J.B. Pritzker has taken similar steps, challenging federal operations and recently filing a lawsuit to block the deployment of federalized National Guard units in Chicago.
The President of the United States in the last 24 hours called for you to be imprisoned. I want to give you an opportunity. We've seen your reaction on social media, but I want to hear what you have to say back to the President of the United States.
Well, let's start with the idea that this is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I gotta say, this guy's unhinged, he's insecure, he's a wannabe dictator, and there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me, so come and get me.
The dispute has created a public standoff between state leaders and the administration, with federal officials arguing that these policies make it significantly harder to track and apprehend violent criminal suspects. With the strong tone of defiance coming from the top, it's not at all surprising that the residents respond in kind. At every protest, you have people waving Mexican flags, physically surrounding Border Patrol agents to prevent them from carrying out arrests, and sometimes actually attacking them with things like pepper spray. Despite all the difficulty in tracking down the culprit, DHS eventually released a statement saying it had taken one suspect into custody. This male suspect had previous convictions for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon in a vehicle and felony possession of a weapon. Also, he was previously convicted of illegal entry into the U.S.
This is indeed an illegal alien that had a prior felony conviction for firearms. I just got off the phone with the FBI. They're doing a fantastic job alongside ATF and Chicago Police Department to wrap this case up pretty quickly. Within 48 hours, they already have a suspect, and they're pursuing additional leads now.
But according to reports, the FBI was considering the possibility that this suspect wasn't working alone, and that little detail changed the tone of the investigation completely. One gunman acting alone is one thing, but the possibility of this being an organized attack takes it to a whole new level. The FBI and CBP could have the beginning of a real crisis on their hands. There have even been speculations that this suspect and his accomplices have ties to Mexican gangs in Chicago. As if that isn't bad enough, there are reports of Chicago gangs issuing shoot-on-sight orders targeted at immigration officials. Specifically, CBP officials say they received credible intel that high-ranking members of the Latin King street gang issued this order in response to increased federal activity across the city. This prompted a security alert from federal authorities, and while it may sound tidy on paper, the direct effect of this is that the men and women putting their lives on the line to protect the country every day now have to also worry about whether or not they get to go back home in one piece. Meanwhile, their only crime is clocking in to do their jobs. So now the question becomes, was this a spontaneous attack or the beginning of a coordinated cartel assault on U.S. soil? At this point, nobody can pretend this is just another incident anymore. While Chicago remains a minefield, the federal government is gearing up for a fight, and the people caught in the middle are the agents who swore an oath to protect the country. But if this really was the first move in something bigger, then what happens when the next gunman doesn't miss? Because one thing is clear, whatever is brewing in Chicago isn't slowing down, it's accelerating.